So sunny in here this morning. Great. It's finally warming up. I'm not shaving or putting on nice clothes until it's actually warm legitimately in my house for more than like 2 days. Okay, so that's how she goes. My water lines were half frozen this morning. I ran it, went upstairs, came back down, and then they were frozen. Okay, great. But I'm sure that won't last very long because the weather is heating up. Number one thing people want to ask me about all the time is fire season ahead. There's lots of reasons why people are pretty nervous about next fire season. We are in some drought situation still in BC. We haven't had the greatest snowfall this winter. And we do have a very warm pattern, it looks like, coming to the second half of March. And if that happens, things will dry out, melt out fast, and we'll be that much closer to being ready for a burn season, especially because the places that are looking to get warmer are places that we know have zombie fires living right now. Okay.
This is bad news. My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen.
Wow. I'll watch the video later.
Feel the heat. I need more nights. I need water.
Ain't dry mopping this.
Okay, first thing we have to look at right now is ocean temperatures. And this is a key ingredient. Now, what we do see is down along the coast of Chile and places, there's some cooler water now upwelling. So what happens is warm water at the surface here has been pushed by trade winds out across the Pacific, and then it came up. And this is what gave us our El Nino last year. We had warm water up here. So now what happens is that as that warm water gets pushed away, cold water from deep in the ocean chases it, comes up, and then so we get the La Nina pattern starting. So there's some reason to think that we're probably seeing a breakdown of the El Nino. That's true. So far, though, I don't see it could hang on to El Nino conditions a little longer. It could go neutral. So we are going to have to wait and see into the summer how this transpires. But I think what's probably going to happen is that obviously this water is going to stay warm at the equator, and then a lot of it's going to get pushed up. So we're going to have warm water up here. Now, what would that look like? So this is an example of 1991. In 1991, we had this sort of similar pattern where we had the beginning of the La Nina beginning to well up. We still had pretty warm water at the equator, and we had that summertime of the North Pacific getting warmer again. So now we're in a pattern where both here is warm and here is warm, and maybe even as you go further south. So we got pockets of pretty. So if we have ocean temperatures that look like this, well, this would be the first time since 1991 we had a setup that looked like this. So we can kind of use 91 and extrapolate a little bit from it. Of course, if we want to compare 1991 to the present, we have to take into consideration several things. One is that the global temperature generally accepted to be about 14.4, 14.5 degrees between 1991 and 2015. So I'm sure somewhere in that 14 to 14.5 was the global average temperature. However, right now we're sitting around 15 degrees. So that is something that could change how weather reacts and whether or not the weather will behave this summer the way it did in 1991. So that's a variable we can't quite account for. Another one we can't quite account for is the fact that we have not very much snow in a lot of places. If we go through the interior, 11 centimeters, and out west of Quesnel in the plateau, 32 centimeters in Burns Lake, that's not bad. 10 centimeters in Williams Lake, 100 Mile House sitting with barely nothing. Cache Creek, Kamloops, Barrier, all very low. Salmon Arm low, Kilchina, so Kelowna. I mean, that's not too surprising given the time of year for a lot of these places. But we are, sitting 60 to 85% in a lot of the mountains. We do have the possibility that we could have still more snow tack on in the next 10 days. However, these places in the interior are not the places to be expecting it. And that also includes up in the Peace region. When we look at snow depth across the board, some places aren't too bad. However, a lot of places, 8 centimeters, that can be gone just like that if we get warming temperatures. And what we do know for sure is that warming temperatures are coming. So we're looking at, this is valid for 17th of March. So we're looking, 2 weeks out. What are we expecting to see in BC? We are expecting to see a ridge of warmth coming up. That should usher in a lot of heat from the American South. desert-like places. That should push up into BC. That should make temperatures in Western Canada well above. And you can see, well, who's losing the heat? Their heat is traveling north, and they'll be sitting a little cooler than average, while the north will be sitting much warmer than average, especially in the Peace. BC, slightly above average, in some areas, significantly above average, but especially up in the Peace. And we look at, we know that these are the areas of drought and zombie fires that we're quite concerned about still. We look at drought intensity, pretty high, all on that east side of the Rockies, northern Alberta, into Saskatchewan, and even a little bit into Manitoba. Go deeper in the soil, we see that the soil is pretty dry as we go further. That's just drought intensity. And if we go ahead 2 weeks to when we expect, close to when that heat will start showing up, the change isn't a good one. Williams Lake seems to be rising. So we could see quickly in the spring drought conditions worsen before they get better. And what happened in 1991? Certainly it didn't start off quite so bad. So here I got meteorologist Mark, and he's looking at snowfall water equivalent percentages for 1991. And we see that, we weren't crazy. Above. So it doesn't look to me like it was a big snow year in BC. So meteorologist Mark has helped give me some of these details, as well as Juna Birchwater has sent me some graphs and information. So we're looking at a lower snowpack than average that year. So maybe not as bad as this year. Mark's a meteorologist who works in the green energy sector. So certainly snowfall equivalent and rain and whatnot. So here's kind of looking middle of the pack a little bit now in the Pacific Northwest. So this has been an improvement. And here's what he's saying about this improvement. Prolonged pattern upper level troughing, repeat general storm system added quite a bit of snow to the mountains Pacific Northwest over the week. On the March 4th, snow water equivalent for the Northwest was 88% of the median for this time of year. Compare that to February 25th, when we were at 73% median. Despite strong increases in snowpack in British Columbia, northern half of Washington is still lacking. This is fairly typical of an El Nino year, when the prevailing pattern has two primary storm tracks, one aimed at California and the other at southeast Alaska. One last storm moves in Wednesday for the round of mountain snow through the northwest. Beyond that, weather models are favoring a long-lasting ridge setup across the west of North Coast of North America. Assuming models are reasonably correct, this will produce dry conditions and warmer temperatures for a while. Winter snowpack has major implications on water availability for growing season. Fire conditions take in a variety of measures. One is how much snow melted, providing trees with much needed moisture. This is not only the metric of consequences, however. When the snow melts and how much moisture is received in the spring and summer determine how much brush growth occurs. A wet start to warm season can lead to large amounts of brush. That's true. If the summer then becomes abnormally hot, that material dries out and provides ample fuel for forest fires to start, spread, and potentially light trees regardless of how much moisture they got from snow in the winter. Climate Prediction Center indicates spring 2024 may be below average precipitation, above average temperature for the Northwest. Not great for farmers. So the question is, will that stay? Here we go. Environment Canada Climate Perspective, January 1991. And look at this. What does this say? So we can compare this winter we just had to 1991. Record warmth replaced by record cold in Western Canada. That sounds familiar. New Year began with frigid Arctic air covering most of Western Canada. Temperatures dropped to minus 50s. So in 2020 we had on January 15th, a minus 40 day in Quesnel. And the last time before that we had a minus 40 day in Quesnel was in 1991. We didn't get that cold this year, but we got pretty cold. Some places did get that cold. In southern BC, it is feared the prolonged cold spell that started across Christmas damaged many fruit trees, especially the soft fruit variety. Wow, that's familiar, eh? The cold weather is accompanied by heavy snowfalls, which increased the mountain snowpack to record levels along the western Cordillera. In January, 20 to 40 centimeters of heavy snow buried the BC lower mainland and Vancouver Island by the second day. Even Victoria did not escape the white stuff as huge piles. Southern BC was already hit by 3 major snowfalls this winter season. It does seem like there has been some winter outbreaks that we can kind of compare. Fruit trees getting damaged, snowfalls all on the coast, blah, blah, blah. In southern Alberta, the thermometer soared into the double digits. Although welcome, the warmer temperatures produce a threatening avalanche situation in the areas, threatening some highways and ski areas. The lack of strong southwesterly flow for most of the month kept Pacific storms away from the BC coast. As a result, areas reported below average precipitation. Only localized areas had above average precipitation, including Prince Rupert area, Lower Mainland, Upper Fraser Valley, and the northern half of the Okanagan. Mackenzie reported the driest January on record, 17.6 millimeters. Snowfalls were well below average everywhere, but with some glaring exceptions. 1990 started with unseasonably mild weather sweeping across the southern portion of the country. 1990. Well, what was 1991's fire season like? Total area burned hectares and total number of fires, Canada 1959 2019. Look at this. So this doesn't add up quite the same because we see that 1989 had a big fire season, but all 90 and 91 did not. So these are variables that don't line up exactly for what we're trying to do here using 1991 as a comparison. But we know in 1991, 24,000 hectares burned in British Columbia, and we know that sea surface anomalies lined up kind of like what we expect to see this summer. Look at 1991, spring precipitation in Kamloops definitely wasn't the record, but if you look at what would be considered sort of an average across the board, slightly above average spring precipitation in Kamloops, BC. Means average spring temperature, more or less, 1991 was average for temperature in Kamloops. We look at precipitation anomaly for 1991 in BC, and we see some areas were quite wet, actually. So especially if you look along the coast and up into central interior, some areas were well above average for precipitation in 1991. We see some of those temperatures, slightly above average. Here's Prince George for 1991. Maximum high temperature June 1st through August 31st. You look at Spokane down in Washington, it was cooler than average. Total precipitation in Spokane, just slightly below. See 1991 for cumulative precipitation, slightly below in June, but increasing July and August. So slightly above. Are we going to get a wetter summer? This is where I'm really trying to find out. So obviously a lot of things need to line up for there to be a fire season that is boom. So, we need to have lots of days that are over 30 degrees Celsius. 2019 and 2020, we didn't get a lot of that in the summer. So then you need to have low precipitation rates, so things are dry, trees are dry. Certainly it helps if there's a lot of growth early in the season, if things take off growing and now there's lots of dead fuel when things get super hot. So fuel moisture. How many days do we have humidity levels below 30%, right? So that's that crossover, 30 degrees plus 30% humidity. When they cross over, that crossover is what makes for fire weather. You could have crossover at 20 degrees Celsius and 20% humidity, but generally the 30-30 rule with wind is the other one. So how much thunderstorms do we get? How much wind do we get? How dry will it be? And how many days of over 30 degree weather do we get? These are the factors that will determine what 2024 actually has in store for us. And as we compare to 1991, as we go into the season, the further we go that we see these similarities show up, the more we can start to say, maybe we're going to have a down year. For Seattle in 1991, same sort of thing you see. Seems for some of the summer below and then starts to meet back up. In Portland, different story, had a wetter June. Summer precipitation in Kamloops though, 1991, you see where this is well above average, perhaps not like 1976, the wettest summer Kamloops may have had in that time frame. Here's the highest temperatures that were recorded in Vancouver in 1991. We see there was some 29 degree days, but actually no, there was one, and the next warmest day is over 3 degrees cooler, and the next day after that, 0.3 of a degree, 0.4 of a degree cooler in August. The top 10 warmest days in Vancouver in 1991, these numbers are mostly not very shocking. That 29's a little bit high for Vancouver, but mostly sit kind of in what you would think to be average hot days for Vancouver. Here's the 2 meter temperature anomaly. Now for June-July 1991, we see that the temperature was slightly cooler in the south, a little bit warmer in the north, and a little bit warmer along the coast. So am I saying that there's going to be, that we're not going to have a bad fire season this summer? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's good reason to think that it's not a sure thing that we will. We could look at Vancouver day by day by day. and just see 17, 16s, 14s through June, 14, 16, 13, June 14th. Some of these temperatures aren't that great. A couple warmer days, 24 degrees in June 19th, a couple days above 20 to end the month of June. Most of July begins above 20, a little dip in July 15th there. One hot day, 29.4 degrees Celsius on July 23rd. And she dropped quickly down to 16.7 after that. When we look at August, above 20, lots of above 20 days. So consistent, but not hot. Have a look at Vernon for March. Lots of 7, 10 degree days there with nighttime lows, just below zero. Heading into April, we're starting seeing some 20 degree plus days in April. And you look at May, though, it starts off quite cool. We don't really get back into 20 degree weather in May until late in the month, and it does a little bit of this. In July, temperatures for Vernon, June temperatures in Vernon, these aren't what I would consider shocking. Vernon can be a very hot place. So we're seeing lots of 20s, 22 degree highs, and lots of lows. Okay, well, there's some closer to typical Vernon weather, 27, 29s as we end the month. July did have a 34 degree day, so that's nice. We've seen a good 2 weeks of above 30, basically, or 30 or close to it, before we come a bit of a cool down into June, a little bit of a warm up. But still, when you think about like how hot Vernon can get, these aren't crazy. Good warm spell there early in August. August, pretty warm for sure. Again, if you compare that to the last summer we just had, we look at Prince George in July 1991. No 30 degree days until the 23rd and 24th of the month. So lots of 17 degree highs. Look at total rain. There was a 15 millimeter day, 5 to 11, 5, 3. So some consistent rains, not periods of long stretches without rain in July that year. Summary, 61 millimeters. That's pretty good. That's pretty good precipitation levels, right? And you'll look at Kamloops at that same time, but you look later in the month and you're like, this is Kamloops, 16 degree highs, 21, 21s. So all in all, you'd have to say like 91 was not a scorcher. It wasn't a scorcher. And when you look at some of these precipitation totals, total rain, millimeters, so Kamloops, of course, is going to be drier than Prince George. It's a much drier place. But you see every couple days, something falls, ending up with 26 millimeters of rain by the end of the month. Yes, we're very dry right now, drier than we want to be. Yes, the snowpack is still lower than we want it to be. There could still be some rebound yet, but I'm concerned that if we're getting into a warm spell in the second half of this month, that we're going to lose a lot of snow cover. We could set ourselves up for an early spring fire season. That seems quite likely. As the El Nino fades, as the summer ocean temperatures change, we may see possibly a rainier, cooler summer than we had last year. Unfortunately, the global temperature is much hotter right now. That makes it hard to predict. I think we are lower in snow right now than we were in 1991. So are we going to see 24,000 hectares burned in BC this year like we did in 1991? I think that's a far cry low number. Do I think that's possible when the season starts off early and then slides into... Well, one thing we do know about these neutral sort of times in BC is that sometimes the jet stream is pointed right at the province for long periods of time. So we did see that in 2019, for example. There was a lot of... There was a low embedded in the Gulf of Alaska. It didn't want to leave, an upper level low, and it kept sending the jet stream straight into BC, putting a lot of cooler temperatures, a lot of precipitation into BC. It led to some thunderstorm outbreaks that were high precipitation storm outbreaks, unlike last year's low precipitation thunderstorm outbreaks. The point is, we can't guarantee it's going to be a bad one, right? Everyone's really scared that it's going to be a bad season this year. And just giving you what I have for data and evidence and looking at past patterns, there's reason to think that we will not have the fire season we had last year. That could all go out the window come summer. We don't know what this fire season really has in store for us. Okay, hope you enjoyed some analysis there. Please hit like, share, subscribe, be part of my channel. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Good luck out there.